All right. Well, hey, this is Cabin Conversations, a regular podcast here at Woodlands Church. I'm Dave, here with co-host Whitney. Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Dave.
Happy Christmas time.
Happy Christmas season.
I know. It's so good. We're here. Last Sunday was the first Sunday of Advent. Not that you know.
I did.
If you're at Woodlands, I mean,
Yeah,
from our services or stuff like that. Secret Advent. But that's all right. Guest this week is Colton.
Yeah,
Hey, Colton.
glad to be here.
How you doing, sir?
Great. Swell.
Doing well.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I say great and swell, not well. But I'm great and swell.
That's
that
great.
beard is coming back.
It is starting to.
It's really
not quite where it was the last time you guys probably saw me on here, but it'll get there.
Making a return.
Yeah.
You're going full length. That's
Full
okay.
length.
I mean, it's okay. It's your choice.
Full length.
Yeah.
That's how far it was?
It was about there.
Just above your
Just
belly
above
button.
your belly button.
It's like, just above my belly button.
Okay.
So we'll see.
How does male hair genetics work? Like you get it from your mother's dad?
I've heard
that. Thing?
That's what I've heard.
Okay. Is he white? Is he gray? My
mother's dad
grandfather
passed away when I was in 8th grade.
Oh.
But what I remember of him was that he was very bald and he had a toupee.
Oh, he did.
Yes? Not a comb over?
Not a comb over.
Like
he had
toupee?
He had a toupee.
A hairpiece.
Yeah,
That's
a
one would
hairpiece.
say.
I'd
Okay.
find it randomly
Excellent.
sometimes in the house whenever I was staying over at their house. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully I keep my hair longer than he did.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I heard that he lost it pretty early.
Okay.
And so did his sons. So
Okay.
we'll see.
So
Yeah.
there might be no truth to the whole.
I hope not, but that is what I've heard. So
know.
Yeah, my dad was bald by the time he was 32, 33.
And you're beyond that
and
now.
I'm beyond that.
Okay.
My hair has always been thin up at the top, and
Okay.
people have, for my whole life, they've been like, "Oh, see, you're balding," and I've been like, "No, it's just what it is.
Just how it
High
is.
hairline and thin at the widow's peak sort of thing." So
Okay.
we'll see.
So what about
We'll
your
see.
mom's dad?
My mom's dad had hair up until age 80. So, Mom, you can confirm that. Anytime I start talking about stuff, I gotta get fact checked by my mom. So, but
She is watching.
She is, yeah. So, but yeah, he had a full head of hair. I think it was thinning a little bit. So, anyway, yeah, it's good. So, Colton, we've been asking guests through this. Oh, before we do this, just a little housekeeping. We say regular podcast, and we had off 2 weeks ago, but we are going to step away from the podcasting world. We're not retiring. We're not hanging up the microphones, but we're stepping away for the Adore series. So the next 3 Sundays and then Christmas Eve is our Adore series. We have a standalone on the 29th, which would be great. And then we'll be back for a Theology of Stuff that John talked about just briefly on Sunday for the 5th and the 12th of January. So we'll be back in January, but we're going to take the next couple of weeks off and let them do some updates around here. And
Yeah, it might be a surprise at in January.
Ooh,
Maybe. We'll
come
see.
back. Yep, we'll see.
Christmas.
No
High
expectations.
expectations now.
I was just about to say
Hold
no
them accountable, guys.
It's not us. So we'll see you guys again in January, which is great. This has been Cabin Conversations. See you. No, I'm just kidding. There's more. Colton, we've been asking guests as they've settled in, what media, so songs or books or different things like that, has been forming you recently?
Yeah, I know that you asked this question
Yeah, 'cause
because
you're a
one of
listener.
the things that forms me every week is this podcast.
That's amazing.
I know all the songs that Dave does and does not like. I know them all.
That's not
so-
because of the podcast.
It's not.
That's just because I tell you.
Yeah, no, actually, this is either Wednesday afternoon or my coffee time on Thursday mornings. I will tune in and listen to you guys. Cool. Another podcast that I listen to regularly is the Oh man,
Unscripted.
I always forget the name of it, and I had it up.
You're the first guest to reference a podcast, I believe.
I listen. Yeah, I listen. The podcasts
On this podcast.
Podcasts are more so my thing. The Unstuck Church podcast.
Carrie Newhoff.
That is more often like church leadership stuff. It's not so much like in-depth Bible knowledge. But I listen to that one pretty regularly. Bible Project every once in a while. I'm in and out of that one quite a bit.
Oh, Gabby's
Gabby
referenced
did.
that.
Yep.
Yep. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I listen to worship music all the time.
Yeah.
I have other.
It formed you.
It
formed your heart.
like one of like my favorite times, and I'm starting to. You're gonna talk back at me, I know, but one of the things that's getting harder is going outside and going for walks. because it's getting so cold.
Okay,
I'm prepared for you.
No. This week was so hard. I feel you, Colton. And for the first time maybe in my life, I was like, oh, I don't want to. It's so cold.
It's cold.
We've said it before on this podcast, though. It's all about the gear.
It is. I think last time I was here, we talked about gear.
Probably.
So.
And you experienced that on Thursday, too, right? You had good gear at the Packer game.
Yeah, went to the Packer game, watched them beat up on Miami. Yeah, it was great.
Sorry, Miami.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Yep. So anyways, I one of my favorite things that I started doing probably 4 or 5 days a week this summer is going for long walks. And long walks for me is like a 5K. I'd like go walk a 5K. And I would just listen to, I'd start at worship music and end at worship music. And that was just a very like worshipful time for me. Every afternoon that I could get to it. So
I think it was in my late 20s that reflecting back on high school, I realized how formed I was by worship music, and by, Chris Tomlin and Matt Redman and some of these things that I listened to just so much, and DC Talk, honestly, and Audio Journaling, and just some of the really deep, like what it means to live abandoned, undignified, those sort of things, and how formative that was. When I think of like all of you is more than enough for all of me, for every want and every need,
it's a song
you satisfy,
right?
Right? Like that formed my expectation of longing and need, and wow, I just for people who don't have that background, that's a loss.
It's or even like I have experienced. If there's a Taylor Swift bop going on, and I wake up with that in my head, I wake up different.
Yeah.
Like so, there's been a point in our family. Sophie's a teenager and getting into making her playlists and has this like eclectic mix of everything, like from The Hobbit, fire, something about fire happening, to Taylor Swift is on it, and I finally was like, hey kiddo, we need some music that's going to be more edifying to you. And so she got on my
calling out the Swifties.
Be
careful there.
I am sorry. But there's an attitude that comes with that in my child, at least, of like this little bit snobby stuff going on. And so she pulled up my Spotify and she's like, Dave's Rap. What's Dave's Rap? This was a long time ago when Lindsay was on staff and you were both like, you liked somebody and she liked somebody else. And so I made 2 different lists and compared them, and I never got into rap, but I'm like, girl, go for it. If you need some Christian rap in your life, it's going to be a little more edifying than
your Christian rap is amazing in terms of like theology and different things like that. If you land with the right artists,
and if you could follow the words and how quickly they talk.
Tripley is her current person that she's listening to. Is that yours?
Yeah, Tripley's phenomenal. Okay. He's not actually actively rapping. He's pastoring a church now.
Okay.
He's a full-time pastor.
Really?
Okay.
So
that's cool.
But anyway, I have experienced the flip side of it. Like
there's something about music that pulls emotions out of me that I even will intentionally bottle up in other areas of my life. And so there will be moments where I'm on this walk and for no apparent reason, this grown man on the side of the road is crying. Yeah. It's neat.
Do you have a favorite worship artist right now?
I don't know that I have a favorite.
You have someone who's particularly resounding?
I listen. No. I mean, I listen to Elevation a lot.
Cody Carnes, probably.
Oh, Cody. Thank you. Yeah, Cody Carnes.
Nothing else was phenomenal on Sunday.
Oh, man.
Really rich.
Yeah, Cody Carnes' song. Brandon Lake.
I cannot get into Brandon Lake.
Really? Oh. now,
just for some reason.
Don't dog a guy on a podcast. He's going to be watching us on Thursday.
I know. So. I apologize, Brandon. I apologize.
But he's got some bangers and he's got some that aren't. But the ones that are up there for me are up there. They're just really, really good stuff. The Hillsong guy. That somehow you introduced me to him, and I didn't know who he was, but I know like a ton of his music.
Yeah.
Are you pulling a name, Dave?
Yeah, it's a guy
I've been listening to Abandon a ton.
Isn't it a good song?
Yeah, it's such a good song. Benjamin William Hastings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has so many songs that are just so rich. He's one of the lead writers and singers for Hillsong, and then he has solo project stuff.
Okay.
So
beautiful writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to end up doing Abandoned?
I don't know. It has made it to our to our Spotify playlist.
Okay.
And that's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
So yeah, for any of you listeners, Woodlands does have a Spotify playlist, and you don't have to be a Spotify subscriber to look at the songs or to see it, and that's available somewhere on our website.
Yeah, it is. Hannah's got it out there.
Yeah, certainly in Digital Bulletin, you can see it and just get access to the songs that either we're currently singing or considering that we might be singing. And so you just put that on and listen to it. You'll get a lot more familiar with the music.
I had a friend get on to me the other day because she got to the bottom of that list, and I started compiling all the Christmas music that we'll start doing in December. She's like, I was not ready for Christmas music. She got to the bottom of it and just like, I don't know, probably a Chris Tomlin Christmas song kicked on.
Yeah.
So, and it is Christmas season.
It is. We're here.
Christmas time.
We're doing that.
My Christmas tree in my office has been on since October 1st.
Wow. Okay.
It acts as a lamp too, like when it starts to get dark, But
all right. Yeah, that's normal.
I don't think I mentioned this last week, but I saw a reel of a guy who made an argument, and again, this is like you're being discipled by 60-second whatevers.
Sure.
But he was like,
talk about formation.
Yeah, right. He said, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Thanksgiving is a holiday within the Christmas season.
Yes, it is.
And he's like, celebrate Thanksgiving, but it is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the Christmas season in that week. And that I was like, oh, I
That's
can
so
actually, like, I have been a very fierce no Christmas before Thanksgiving.
And that changed you, huh?
It's unlocked it. It hasn't changed me, but I'm like, okay.
You're buying into the corporate scheme.
Yeah. And
they want you buying that fake Christmas tree on November 1st.
So our house is fully decorated now, or it's in the process
ours is
still.
too.
But
we went and
did
cut down a tree.
ton
on
of
Saturday.
decoration and
Ours
just
is
enjoying
still
that.
very much in process.
Yeah.
Like we've been gone.
That's what we did
Yeah,
this
you've been
weekend.
in and out. Yeah.
So Friday and
so fun.
Sunday, that's just decorating stuff. So had a good time. Had a good time watching the Christmas movies. We were talking about this just even before the podcast. So what's your favorite Christmas movie, Whitney? Or a favorite? Sorry, I can say
what's a favorite? I mean, Elf is just kind of a classic. The Family Stone.
Yeah.
I love the Family Stone.
My wife loves the Family
often
Stone too.
Cry during the Family
I don't know
Stone.
what the Family Stone is.
Oh, it's like this dysfunctional family coming together around the holidays, and there's.
But it's actually really moving.
So-
Like there's some family dynamic stuff that goes on that probably is why I'm
Is this going to
weeping.
be in our show notes so I can go back to it?
The Family Stone,
Family
sure.
Stone.
AI tends to pull
I've
these
got it
things
on
out.
DVD, so I can. If you know what
perfect.
that.
I
What
think
does
it's on
DVD
Netflix or
stand
something.
for?
Digital something?
Video
Video
device.
digital
video
disc.
disc.
Okay.
We'll fact check this, but that's okay.
This is Dave's tidbit.
Oh no, I had a tidbit. You didn't have a tidbit, and I had a tidbit.
Yeah.
During hunting season, Wisconsin ranks as one of the world's largest army. What do you guess it ranks as?
Whoa, you have to ask that question again.
During hunting season, Wisconsin all of a sudden becomes ranked as like a sizable army in the world.
Wisconsin
hunters rank as a certain sized army.
So what is the number?
What's the number?
What's
What
the
are they
number
ranked?
of our rank? So
Right.
like biggest, like we're talking biggest though, not
Right.
because
Size, like numbers wise.
So,
How many people make up the army? Or not? I'm not asking how many people. I'm asking what.
I'm gonna say
it
we're
is.
top. I'm gonna say we're top 10.
We are top 10.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm gonna say 7.
I'm going to say 6.
Oh wait, no, I don't even know. Yeah, okay, I said 7 already.
Vicky told me it was 4th was the conversation
I
around
was
her
closer.
Thanksgiving, but then we fact checked and it's actually 8th.
Oh!
Right.
Wrong direction. Statistically speaking, I should have gone 6, right? Yeah,
Statistically speaking, you're wrong. 8th, yeah, the 8th largest. So after the
kinda-
U.S.,
That's
like North Korea,
impressive.
China, Russia, all of these. Yeah,
That was a big one.
Largest standing armies.
China had the biggest, I think.
Yeah.
Russia was up there.
Yeah, UK probably is on that list somewhere in there.
She didn't mention okay. I thought maybe, but anyway.
And Wisconsin.
Wisconsin hunters.
So that's crazy.
There's the tidbit.
Well, we could definitely take over Michigan then. Take over the UP, reclaim that, like bring that back.
Okay, I said my favorite was Elf in the Family Stone. What are your favorites?
Mine's Elf.
Elf.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
It's like way up there.
Elf, Home Alone.
Oh,
so.
the Santa Claus. I like the Santa Clauses too.
Santa
I mean,
Claus
yeah,
is
it's
up
a good
there,
one.
but Home
Home
Alone,
Alone's great too.
Home Alone
Yeah.
is just kind of our jam at Christmas time. So.
Elf is always the one we go to.
Have you seen Klaus?
Yep,
That's
it's a
Oh,
great animated.
that's
animated, maybe on Netflix.
We have.
Yep.
It's a little scary, maybe for little ones.
We've seen it. Judah likes scary.
Yeah. There's some really good ones. We were talking about Christmas Chronicles.
Yes.
Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
I do think is the best Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So stinking good.
And I argue that Tim Allen might be.
I would agree with Tim Allen, but
Tim
I
Allen's
don't
way up there.
disagree.
Yeah,
Like,
I'd put
he's
Tim Allen
great.
as too,
Yeah.
but Kurt Russell's beard, like I don't know if that's real or fake. But, it's so good. It's so much better than Colton's beard.
Hey now, I just gotta whiten up a a little bit. It's coming in.
We'll
Unfortunately, actually, yeah.
We'll spray it. Yeah. So good. No, I got to rag on Colton's beard if you're on the podcast.
If you know it all.
Yep. So it's a respect thing. So pivoting really hard over to Sunday service.
Oh, Sunday service.
Yeah.
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice, and wrapping up the planting series.
The planting
which
series.
I continue to think was probably one of our most unified conceptual things that just really did. Whitney, like the three of us were involved in that, and John obviously. But through the teaching team, the planting analogy really came out, and then the creative elements all really. Yeah. Devin did great on the stage, and those fake flowers that grew, and then to top it off with potatoes was super fun.
Yeah.
But it just did not fit the season at all. It fit the tax.
As it got cold outside, we were like, flowers!
So it's growing.
Actually, a funny story with that is one of the planting tips with Tim. When I called him up to ask him if he'd be willing to do that, I was like, yeah, man, we'll try to plan out a date like the next month or so. And I can't remember like back when this was, but I mean, it was about ready to start getting cold out. He's like, no, we got to do this week. we won't have flowers in a week from now. Go. So he was a yes. And like 2 days later, we were shooting the video.
Time to go.
Yeah.
So.
I also added gardening bibs to my Christmas list because of planting tips with Tim. I want to be a little old lady walking around in gardening bibs.
The
so
continuity.
Great. So loved it.
It really worked. The scripts you wrote were really well done.
They added such a thematic thread through the whole thing. I think it could have been lost a little bit with like the different titles and whatever, but planting tips with Tim just did a good.
Props to Tim, the professional actor.
He crushed.
He did awesome, didn't he? Yeah, I know.
Was he reading off of a teleprompter? Was it
no?
A teleprompter?
I mean, video magic. Like he would be walking away from the camera and he would have the script in front of him, or he would memorize like a couple sentences of a script, and that's when you see the front of his face. Or he would just read the whole script, and we would use B footage. And so,
I figured there was a lot of B footage over him reading the script.
So there,
he crushed it. It was
he
phenomenal.
did excellent.
So that is a happy little plant. And then we got in. I remember when we were in the teaching team, I was like, do we really have to drag it through 16:1-5? It's like, this just doesn't feel contiguous. It's technically the start of the second missionary journey. And John did so good bringing it together, wrapping it up, landing this. He was clearly speaking about something he was passionate about.
Yeah.
I told him today I thought it was one of his best sermons that he's preached. I just was really humbled by a lot of the things he shared, the way he shared it. The points I thought were really, really well made. And we all have these stories of people who have influenced us. And so I'd love to hear some of those stories from you guys. Who's that been for you? Who's been your Paul?
Your mother.
My mom. Mom, second shout out.
She's popular on this podcast.
Davidson,
she's just right, but she was Bondison when I met her, which is crazy. Our friendship now spans 12 years, 10 years.
Wow.
So I met her. I met Ginny on the Global Outreach Lead team. In a couple of meetings, and I remember saying, I think I need a mentor. Maybe do you want to do that? And she was like, I've been praying, thinking that maybe I need to do that. And so it was just like beautiful. We were both kind of being led at the same time, and it's turned into more of a friendship, but she's definitely mentor-esque, mom-esque. Great.
Yeah, your spiritual mother. So,
yeah.
Super cool.
That's awesome.
How long's that relationship been then?
I've been on staff for 10 years, and we started like probably a couple months in.
Okay.
I'm 10 and a half years in to staff. So 10 years.
Significant amount of time. So.
Yeah, I've never had somebody that has been a Paul throughout my whole life. I've gone through seasons of people that I think have been Paul for me. Growing up was my dad. My dad was incredibly, I don't know if he I'm going to say he was intentional. I don't know how intentional he actually was, or if it just happened very naturally. But it felt intentional. He was a worship pastor as well, and when he wasn't a worship pastor, he was very involved in worship ministry, and he would take me alongside and teach me and show me. And so in my younger years, my dad really helped form me in a lot of ways. And then I went off to college, and I started working at a church as a worship guy, part-time, as this young 18-year-old kid that didn't know anything. And there was the senior pastor there, his name's Mark, leaned into me heavily, and helped form me for probably 3 to 4 years of my younger life as well. And then I moved back to St. Louis, and I started working with some other people at an E-Free church there, and a guy named Aaron did the exact same thing, took me under his wing, and I got to learn from him for quite a while until I ended up in Mississippi. And so I have these little stints of different people that I could look back, and I could look back at more during the time of my father as well, some of the youth leaders that lean into me, knowing that I was going into ministry as well, just trying to take me under their wing and teach me everything they know. I can't think of somebody that from the time I was 20 till right now, they've been in my life the whole time. I've seen seasons of Paul's.
What does that look like when you say take me under their wing?
So for my dad, it was really showing me what it meant to be a servant. So not so much like us sitting down and reading scripture and learning theology. I don't think I'd credit my dad necessarily to that, but showing me what it meant to have a servant's heart in the life of the church.
To live theology?
Yeah, live theology. A lot of the others were more like sitting down and talking about the Bible and talking about how we live. I have a friend that's more of a peer, not a Paul. But his name is Josh. He worked with me at the last church that I was at. And him and I, and Chandler, I've talked about Chandler before on the podcast, we would sit down and we would talk about the Bible, and we'd talk about theology, and we'd talk about the characteristics of God. And I learned so much from them just listening to them pour out their heart. I don't know that I would call them Pauls in my life. Sure. They were peers. They were like, we are to each other. But I learned a lot from them over my span of ministry there as well.
I think the encouraging thing about your dad, and sometimes mentor, Paul, Timothy relationships can feel like you need to know everything and you need to know how to intentionally pour in and build up somebody. But even your dad, he lived life and invited you along. Yeah. Right. And maybe showed what servant leadership was just by being a servant and having you there and witness it, and not necessarily having a 5-point lesson to go along with it,
The verse I think of is Paul in 1 Corinthians 11 saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? I'm going to follow Jesus, and you just kind of see what I do. 2 stories that pop into my head.
But there's also this the invitation will come along too,
So two stories I think of. One, Bill Allison, who spoke at the men's retreat this last year, and I wasn't able to get there, but I've heard him speak many times. He talked about a time that he and his wife invited a very young newlywed couple over to their house, and he was just like, we're just going to do life together. And so they had dinner, and then he's like, after dinner I get up and wash the dishes. And so I told the guy, hey, come wash the dishes with me. And afterwards the guy was just processing, I've never seen that before. That was just I'd never seen a man serve in that capacity because that's not what he saw. And so just that hey, I'm just going to do my life stuff, and I'm going to try to be as healthy as I can be, and come do what I do is so cool. I had the wife of my senior pastor in Merrill told a story once where she said she woke up in the middle of the night and found her daughter who had been startled awake from a nightmare, and she was in her praying chair. And she's like, Brittany, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't know. I'm scared. And so I went to the chair where I know you meet with God. And you think about I am that is discipleship right there. You'd modeled that this is where I'm going to meet with God, so much so that your young child just runs to that place. That's imitate me as I imitate Christ, I think, right? Which is the one that's what it looks like. I think I see that in parenting, but in ministry that it sometimes looks a little different. Like you said, your youth pastor took you under his wing, and that's just, he was just inviting you along and kind of that, come with me as I do this.
Yep. Yeah. So. And then slowly empowering me too. I distinctly remember my youth pastor and even the life leader who was like my group leader, like starting to release opportunities of ministry to me that probably at one point was theirs to do and own, which is so empowering. It's cool.
And that's 100% how you lead, man. Like, I mean, I just, even on Sunday, just humbled that, you're playing keys, which isn't your primary instrument. And you're back line, you're not MD, you're just there. You're just filling for someone.
Yeah.
But you've released and empowered others into the ministry of everything, which is cool. So that matriculation of ministry vision is pretty evident in that.
Amen.
Super cool.
What about you?
Dan DeRoshi is definitely one as my youth pastor. He pulled 4 of us together in a discipleship group. I think it was my 9th grade year, and we kind of stuck together for 3 or 4 years of just studying scripture and doing things like that. And then there's probably some other.
How big was the youth group at that time?
Probably 40 to 60 in high school. I mean, it wasn't tiny. It wasn't small. It was a good chunk.
Yeah.
I think there's probably one guy's 9th grade group when I was in 9th grade. It probably had 7. So multiply that times 8, which is a guy and a girl group in each of the grades. You get 50, 60, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a good sized group with a lot of just people that I continue to look up to and just like are faithfully following Jesus. And that's a really rich testimony, I think, to ministry at that time, in that season. But yeah, that group was Jared Colton. And so, Lori Colton, her oldest, and Logan, his older brother. Steve Berg was in that group. And then Jake Locast was the kind of the fourth. So third, fourth, me. I was the fourth. And so, yeah, just like exploring what does it mean to be a young man seeking to follow Jesus and pursue ministry and that sort of stuff was just really, really cool during that season. Some other people in college and names. And then I think even watching, when I started in ministry at 21, I was a full-time pastor, which is just continues to stun me. There were men that poured into me. Jim Blakey, who now attends this church and I get to minister alongside, would take me out to lunch and he loved Jesus. He loves Jesus. And it was just so cool to kind of sit and learn from him. But I saw how my senior pastor loved people and led. And he and I differed significantly on how to do church. But I never once doubted his sincerity. Yeah. And his passion. And so I've taken a lot of lessons from Todd, who's now with Jesus, but learned a ton from him. And then Brian Berg.
That goes a little bit back to even when we were discussing previous of strategy can be different, but your heartbeat is the same. Yeah. That look, you got multiplied here. Yep. And there was ministry that happened here, but yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut off Brian. Yes to Brian Berg too.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely names. I don't feel like, to that intentionality, Dan was very intentional in that. I don't know if I felt like I've had other men be very intentional about that. And I don't know that I felt that intentional, probably because I have an unhealthy arrogance or something. Just got to figure it out, that sort of thing.
AI catches Dave's arrogance.
Where Dave, Whitney, and Colton sit down to talk about Dave's arrogance. He repents.
If we say it a couple more times,
it will catch it. Yeah, I'm afraid that will be the title of this video.
Dave's arrogance and imitating Christ. No, the Lord continues to refine, right? Amen.
Amen.
We trust that. But yeah, maybe a maverick side of things or something where I think I can do it. But would that this church be? I think John's charge was really great. We were just in a meeting the three of us talking about the leadership gathering coming up in February, and the fact that there will be leaders from the church called into that, and what an opportunity leading up to that for our leaders to go out and to find those that they will apprentice or call into apprentice-ness. Yeah.
Yes, that. Do that.
Exactly. Do it. But yeah, or you call someone younger, spiritually. You know, they might be older.
Yeah, they could be.
Say, come on, let's do this. Do this alongside me for a year. Man, small groups.
Yeah.
Like, how good would small groups be?
Yeah.
If every leader who's starting to lead a group had spent a year apprenticing under someone else.
Well, and even following up John's charge from the leadership gathering in August, after we were all together for that first half an hour of the leadership gathering, we got split into ministry groups, and Group Life had one, and one of them was, do you have any apprentice leaders? We knew where John was going, so several groups wrote down names of people, and they're highlighted on our list of what the lists of groups, and we're praying specifically for the certain apprentice leaders that have been identified and how God might use them. We never know. They may not be the next Group Life leader. They might be, but they might be doing something in the church and more engaged and more equipped to do that. So.
The re-engage group model uses apprentice leaders, and it's been helpful for me to see the distinction between, like, okay, you've been in a 15-week program and you're clearly a leader caliber couple who's been through the program. There's a difference between that, identifying that, and then launching them as leaders next year, and saying, okay, you're actually going to come back for another year. You're going to go through the program as an apprentice leader, not as just a leader, but as an apprentice leader. That's a distinctly different model. Than
I even like the fact that they get to do the whole re-engage 15, 16 weeks as a participant first. Even leadery type people are doing it as a participant and then come back. You just look for different things as a leader when you're facilitating those things. Yeah. So to be able to scope it from one to the end as a participant and then as an apprentice leader is really a great model.
One of the things that we had the opportunity of doing in the worship ministry this year is creating leadership teams. Ours are very small. We have 4 music directors. They kind of oversee specific teams on the back line, and then worship leader directors on the front line. And one of the paths that we're kind of taking with this is a ongoing rotation where everyone kind of signs on. They do. They sign on for a 4-year commitment, and they say, I'm going to lead this team for the next 4 years. And a piece to that is always trying to identify who's going to take the place of the person that's leaving next year. And so what we've done is we have our, let's say, our 4 music directors, but one of those music directors is leaving next August. And so we're taking in somebody that we can see taking their place next year and having them walk alongside that team for the next year. They're not leading, but they're being prepped to lead.
Yeah, it's a very intentional model that replicates. Sometimes those replication models take a lot longer.
They do.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, you got to have patience.
Yeah, and that's the long growth design, and it's harder to start too because you know, how do you start this model? And in group life, you need groups, you need leaders to step up, and so it's kind of hard to say, okay, we need leaders, and I've got leaders, but we're not going to have them lead. We're going to have them apprentice for the year.
It gets particularly pinchy when we're growing at 20%.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So
there's just come lead.
There's a pinchiness in there. Yeah.
And that is an interesting. Another thing. Sorry, this isn't about this. This is about the 20%, right? But
it's a part of Sunday too.
You, Whitney, with your groups, you've really focused on this groups basics class, and I think it's been so wise to. And I've heard through various communication channels where we've solicited some feedback. Sometimes people are like, it's just this unnecessary roadblock or hindrance. But there are so many people who are coming into our church who have transplanted here, and they have a small group model mindset. And so for them to say, I'm just going to lead a group, I know what that's about. Yeah, you knew what it was about there, but you don't know the culture here. And in order for us to actually create and maintain any sort of culture, we have to guard a culture. And so the way you're doing that is through, so I just really want to commend you for that.
That's awesome.
But it's really wise to create that culture, culture formation mentality to that.
Yeah, I've heard feedback from people that have been in groups that have people, so leaders that have people that have come through basics, and the people that have come through basics have grabbed onto some of those pillars and are like, wait, how are we being missional? I'll lead that piece instead of putting it on the leader. Like, I've heard this. I heard that we need to do this as a group.
I expect my group to be like this.
To be like this, which I think initially put a little pressure on leaders of like, oh, wait, what if we're not doing this great? But I think there's the beauty of being in community, and being a leader doesn't mean you need to carry everything. It means that you can find people in your group that can carry certain things that their heart's particularly drawn to. So if somebody's coming in and saying, hey, I'm all about the missional piece, empower them, equip them to do it, and let them go, right? So
let them own it.
Yeah, we'll see. It's still fairly new. We're just 2 years in, year and a half in. So we'll see where it continues to go.
I think one thing that's worth saying about the Paul Timothy, like we're talking about it right now because our world is ministry related, leading ministries. That is not necessarily or exclusively a ministry leadership model. Yeah. It's not just for leadership gathering people. This is for discipleship. Mm-hmm. John's mention of DLGs was spot on. And that is the menu model venue. It was model and venue got combined to menu. That is the model we've embraced, though, here at Woodlands for what replicatable disciple making looks like. Yep. Being a disciple maker who makes disciples. Mm-hmm. So if you're not in a DLG, Colton, you did a DLG.
I did a turbo group. Yeah. I've not dived into an actual.
You're not leading one right now.
I'm not leading one right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I went through the content the year before with a Plathos huddle. So I had a discipleship group kind of spread out across the country with different associate pastors, which is cool.
It's just it's phenomenal. I would encourage anybody that can to dive into a DLG. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's probably not people listening necessarily here, but we get a fair number of input from people that are like, hey, I just, I'm super like, I know I want to be a Christian, but I don't know what that looks like. Mm-hmm. Like, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. DLG.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do the DLG.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that might be you listening. Sorry, I don't want to make any assumptions that all of our listeners are. So do a DLG. Even if you feel like you know what it's at, do a DLG.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about Paul and Timothy, where it feels like somebody's a little bit ahead of you and helping you walk along. But you mentioned peers too. And so even if you're stepping into a DLG, you're going to be potentially surrounded by other people that are following Jesus and want to know how to follow him more. Yep. And so it'll be that you'll have people to imitate that are following Christ. And if you don't step into a DLG, then where else are you going to, where will you find that, I guess, is the question to wrestle with. And if you have a space, cool. But a DLG is a great space to have, to watch people love the Lord in all areas of their life.
I think that's a decent, finishing place. Just this, the concept you are being formed. Well, you are imitating someone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're imitating someone. And it might be who you see on TV. Mm-hmm. It might be celebrities. It might be people you work with. Mm-hmm. Make sure the people you're imitating are seeking to imitate Christ.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that bleeds out further than that. I mean, people are imitating you. Yeah. So it's so important. Yeah. And for your personal life, in your personal walk, yes, but for others as well. Because we influence other people around us. We have people that are looking to us for some reason, some capacity, in some areas of our lives. And so what's forming us is forming other people.
Yes.
And so we've got to be super intentional and cautious of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to plug randomly my folk. I don't think I plugged Faithful Habits, did I? Did I talk about that last week?
Think so.
Bible 101 is the first of our core classes. Maybe I have talked about this, but our next core class is coming out in January, where it'll be a bit of a beta run, but I'm really excited about it. It's called Faithful Habits. Mm-hmm. And it's really asking the question, how are we using our time intentionally in order to be increasingly formed into Christ's image? Mm-hmm. And there's time studies that are involved, and just thinking through different habits in different categories, 5 major categories, and how do we pick different areas of our life to intentionally work on, and then how does that get formed and change our community? So ultimately, that's the whole idea. So it's Bible 101 is thinking about how do I read the Bible? Faithful Habits is really how do I look like Jesus? And Bible's part of that. For the sake of others.
For the glory of God, for your own good.
For the sake of others. That's where we land. You had to do in community, and it's going to change community. So.
Amen.
So if you're kind of all right, I don't feel like I'm imitating Jesus all that much, or I can grow in that, and that's all of us.
Yeah.
Faithful Habits will be a great place for that.
Or there's another season that's going to tick over in your life, and you're going to need some other practices, right? It's about introducing some practices too. So
practices and developing practices.
I think there's, I think when I think of Faithful Habits, I think of 5 categories, but thinking about adding to your toolbox, because you never know which season you're going to clip over next. When you have a newborn and you're feeding round the clock and, and
oh my goodness,
washing bottles and all, like things have changed a little bit,
Yeah.
and you might need different habits, or you might need different tools that you can use in those different seasons, and we're all going to walk through different seasons.
And it's going to be so valuable when you walk into those seasons to have a habit rather than just be like, oh, I've heard of this. Yeah, you've developed these. So that's going to be cool. So, hey, again, we'll be back in January. Which is great.
Signing off for 2024.
Yeah, it'll be back for season 4.2. We'll see how that works. So, all right. Hey, have a Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Yep. We'll see you.
Happy
Bye.
New Year.